Hi, podcast listeners. My name is Madison Hopkins, and this is Modern Ways. Modern Ways is a guide to eco-friendly homes. And on this podcast, I combine sustainability and real estate for people who want to change their home environment. In each episode, my guests and I empower you with fundamental knowledge so you can create your eco-friendly home and thus change the world around you. Thanks for tuning in today. I really appreciate you being here and hope you learned something new. So, let's hop on in to the modern ways of eco-friendly homes. Hi, podcast listeners. Thanks for tuning in. On today's episode, Eric Krohn is our guest. Eric is a senior loan officer with a locally owned and operated Champion Bank. He began working in securities and real estate finance in 1991 and has helped thousands of homeowners purchase and refinance their property in order to maximize their financial situation. Eric has been in renewable energy since 2009 in residential and commercial properties, such as solar, demand management, lighting, windows, insulation, and various other projects. He is well-versed in financing residential properties using multiple options and commercially using the C-PACE program. Eric, thank you so much for being on the show today. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thanks for the invite. I appreciate it. It's a pleasure to be here as well.
Awesome. So let's hop into the show. My first question for you today is I would just like to know a bit about your background, how you got into loans, and how specifically you started an interest in sustainability and eco loans, if that's what they're officially called. If you could also tell us that.
All right. Well, when I was 19 years old, I was in college and up at Colorado State. And I was really not interested in going to college, honestly. I was taking history classes and things, and I had a family member who was in securities at the time, and I was just really not having a good time. And so I decided to get into securities. So I went from Colorado State studying history into becoming a stockbroker. And that was when I was 19 years old. I got sponsored and passed my test and started soliciting people for securities. A few years into it, I decided that real estate was probably going to be my best option. It's going to be the best thing for me to actually help my customers maximize their lives. So I went ahead and got into becoming a loan officer. There wasn't a test at the time, and I didn't have to be sponsored or anything like that, so it was a real easy transition for me. So I did that from 1993 up until 2006 straight. And during that time, I started watching the world around me change, and people started having different priorities. Instead of, cashing out money to go buy a new car and stuff, I noticed that people were starting to become more attuned with the environment. And so what I sought was to go ahead and find a way to get in that business, learn it from the installation and engineering side, and then apply it into what I do, which is finance. So after the crash of 2008, which actually began in 2006, I went ahead and made the decision to actually go to school. So I went from being an owner of a mortgage company with 50 employees. I went ahead and learned how to install solar panels. So I went to the Community College of Aurora for a year. And after that, I earned a certificate of installation. From there, I was the only person in my school, actually, the whole program, to get a job. I actually took a job with a startup solar company, which I still do business with, actually. And from there, it was just myself, the owner, an electrician, and an installer. Went from just the four of us to 5 crews in 3 years. I sold 250 systems that I didn't have any training how to sell. I did shows, I did all sorts of stuff to try and further it. But what I did realize is that when you get into renewable energy and start learning the business, people need to pay for it. And so that was where the real struggle actually was, is that at that time, systems were considerably more expensive, and you'd have to take out a home equity line of credit or do a lease on them. And I didn't like those options. So I actually started to dabble back into mortgage finance to figure out the best way of doing that. And I worked with various financial institutions to try and come up with different products. And so I've been biding my time over the last several years trying to get to a point to where I can actually have a turnkey product for somebody to either buy a house or refinance a house and put all of these things on their house at the time of purchase. So that's kind of what my logic is to help customers who don't in a lot of instances, don't even know they can actually do that. When they buy a house, add things to the mortgage, I can actually do that now. So we're at the time and the place in the business world where those things are optional. They're an option. So that's kind of where I come from. Like I said in the beginning opening statement, I've helped thousands of customers do various things, and now I want to help them, in a specific demographic or target market, which is the younger generation buying their first home. Because when I bring up my program, and the first thing they say is, "I didn't know I could do that," and I laugh because I know you couldn't do that. That's why I'm here, so to speak. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's why I made this product. So I've got the financial backing of my bank, and I've got several contractors around town that offer a wide variety of products that are interested in me being able to offer this product to their customers. So that's kind of what I do.
That's really amazing. Thank you. I did not know that whole background, and I like that you were like, I saw a gap and I filled it. So you said you started doing that in 2008. You started installing solar panels, or 2006?
I went to school. No, in 2006, I was like, when the crash started happening, a lot of guys that were in my business started to say, "Hey, look, we got to figure out something to do for work because it's going to blow up." And then when it finally did blow up in 2008, I'd already made my decision to get into renewable energy because I see the potential in that.
Okay.
And so that was
2012, you were already there.
No, I was already in, and
yeah,
I was already kicking butt, actually. So,
what do you think? And this is less of a loan question, but I'm sure you can find a way to make it a loan question. But what do you think about how long it's taken solar panels to catch?
It's because of the price. It's out of money. It's out of pocket money. So when you get a solar panel or you buy a solar system, you have to pay for it. So like in 2008 to 2012, the prices were 3 and 4 times what they are now. And so the state of Colorado and state of California actually instituted a rebate program that they forced the utility providers to actually adopt. And one of those things was they have to be a specific percentage of their energy has to come from renewable energy by a certain date. We've already passed that. It was 2020. We've already passed that with Xcel Energy, but the prices for the materials were a lot more expensive. So now that there's mass production of these things from a variety of different countries, the price of the systems and the efficiency of the installation part of it, it's really increased too. So their cost per putting it together has actually come down dramatically. On the other side of that, other things have come in to dissuade that a little bit. And what I mean by that is that, your utility providers are not paying as much as they used to. And their logic is because it's not as expensive to put the system on the roof. The municipalities are charging more for, inspections. They're requiring more things to be done on the systems, which is fine, but panel prices and inverter prices have come down. So that's a good thing. But the lack of available financing options is really a big part of that. So I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
Like in 2010, 2011, if you wanted to go out and get a solar system, you had to pay cash for it. Okay. Or you needed to lease it. So leasing means you put no money into it, and they basically put solar panels on your roof, and they charge you less than what the utility company would charge. That's it. You had no control over the quality of materials that were being put on your roof. Usually the installations were ugly, I should say. They were, silver panels on a black roof. They're facing different directions. They weren't symmetrical. There was conduit on the outside of the roof, and those kinds of things. People didn't really like the looks of them. So that was what you would get with a lease. But their logic would be, you're not putting any money into it. So therefore, why wouldn't you want to do it? We're charging you a little bit less. So when you went to buy a system, you had to pay 30 or 40 grand for it. So the way you could do that typically was going to be cash, or you could do a home equity line of credit on your house, which means you had to have equity in the house,
right?
Which means you're not a first-time home buyer,
right?
And so those were the options that were available. And then you could find a home improvement lender that would be able to give you some money to finance the project, but you'd be at 10, 12, 15% on that money. And so when you did the payment, the amortization, the payment on it, it'd be 2 and 3 times what you pay for electricity. Where's the incentive?
Right.
So unless you're dead set on being green, financially it didn't make a lot of sense. Although there's a tax credit that would come back if you went ahead and bought the system outright, at least you wouldn't get that. So it's like, why would you really want to do that and mess up your roof? So that was kind of the way it was then. Over the last several years, different home improvement companies have actually come out with products that are specifically designed to mirror your payment on your utility bill. So, and they're pretty close. And then when you factor in the tax credit in year 2, you can actually bring that payment down a little bit. But it doesn't bode well for anyone that's young, who are the people that really believe in this product, the people that have been brought up to believe in global warming and the environment's changing. Those people are basically out of it until they build up enough equity or cash to buy it outright. And that's really what I'm trying to change.
All right. Well, great. Let's dive into that. So you have the Renew, Redo Colorado program.
Mm-hmm.
And when we first met, you had it set up, but you were still tweaking it a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us, what is Renew,
Sure.
Redo Colorado?
The program is designed to get people into homes and then add to the purchase price things such as a solar system, windows, appliances, HVAC, furnace, things that are big ticket items that if it blows up after you buy the house, you're looking at 10 grand out of pocket where you can get that money. So typically when you're buying your first home, you're not buying a brand new home, typically. Everything's all brand new. You're trying to keep your monthly payment down to a certain level, which means you're buying a used house, which there's nothing wrong with that. It's a starter house. I get it. But with my program, what I would do is add anywhere from $25,000 to $50,000 on top of your purchase price to do those upgrades at purchase. So the products themselves, the mortgage vehicles that I'm offering, have been around for 30 years, but no one's actually done what I'm proposing to do on the houses. So what you need to figure out if you're going to buy a house. I would do a pre-qualification for you, just as a kind of a scenario. And then what I would do is I would give you a pre-approval for a specific amount of money. Let's say it's $350,000. So then you would go out and find them a house for that price range, and you call me up and say, Eric, I've got a house that you could probably go take a look at, or have one of your contractors go take a look at. And with that, looking at the house, you can say, I can put solar panels on it. I can do a furnace, an air conditioning unit, some windows, all that in there, and then add that to your purchase price. Now, the difference between the financing part of it, when it comes to 100% financing or something like that, to the extra 35 grand, let's say, or 50,000, is maybe $100 a month extra. You couldn't go out and find those products after you bought the house and spend 5 times as much per month. You would never be able to do it, because each of those would have different financing tools. Mm-hmm. So the interest wouldn't be at 3.5% 30-year fixed. It'd be at 5, 10, 15%. So when you spread that out, solar panels at 25,000, let's say, that's going to be a couple $100 a month. If you went to Best Buy and you bought appliances that were high efficiency, that would be a couple $100 a month. Furnace, HVAC, windows. So what I'm trying to do is work with local vetted contractors that are approved by the bank, as well as lenders, as well as, let's say, VA or FHA. So they have to be brick and mortar here in Colorado. They have to be licensed, bonded, insured, to actually say, okay, Eric, go look at this house. And then I come back the next day and say, or I have my contractor go out there and say, okay, we can do this, this, and this. This is the price. This is what's going to be per month for you. You have to do nothing. Why wouldn't you do it? You're never going to be able to find a better deal out there. So that's the logic, is me trying to help people that really believe in this product line and sustainability to actually get into a house and have it be a part of the purchase.
I love that. I think it's so useful, because not only, like you were saying, do we have to have $300 a month for one part of that, $300 for another part of that, but also that's a lot of work on the future homeowners. or the current homeowners to say, okay, now I have to do my research and I have to go choose all of this. So I think it's really generous of you to come up with this and be like, okay, I have it all ready for you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's a package.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone loves a good package.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely.
And so are you able to do this loan with
Yep.
people who are current homeowners?
I am.
Okay.
So it would take a refinance, and however, there are a wide variety of different ways that I can do that. And I'm well versed in all the product lines and interest rates. And I would sit down with you as a homeowner or a home purchaser and decide which route is best for you. Now, on top of that, the state of Colorado has come out with a new product too, that you don't have to redo a first mortgage, but you can actually do a small second mortgage in order to do those kind of products as well. So it really depends. If you're at 2% 30-year fixed, maybe you'll want to refinance it. But I can put you into something that's state sponsored at like 4. So it really depends on the numbers.
Okay.
But that's what I'm good at, is figuring out the best way of doing it and then sitting there and saying, here, you're putting American-made solar panels on your house. I'm not putting anything on from certain places. And it's going to be from a quality, vetted contractor that's local, that doesn't have negative reviews. They're going to show up on time. They're going to do the job. There's going to be a schedule after the loan closes as to, we're putting this on this time frame, this goes on this time frame, this goes on this time frame. I'll be working with you because I'm a member of the bank. Obviously, I've got to watch the money go back and forth. So I've got to be a part of that situation. But, these are people that and I get calls all the time as a banker, hey, I'm XYZ solar company. Can I use your products? And my response to them is, as long as you've got good reviews, you're licensed, bonded, and insured. So that gets rid of your chuck in the truck guys that are like, oh, I'm just going to do it here and there. And, I'll put it on there for you cheaper. But then if there's a problem with it at all, the installation 2 years down the road, you're never going to find me. And that's what I want to avoid. And that's what the bank will require. You can't do it yourself.
Yeah. Well, I think that's very fair.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. To doing this for the customer, I mean, when you're trying to buy your first house, you're not really thinking about solar incentives or, what kind of washing machine do I want? What's my bill like with Xcel Energy or any other utility provider? So some of the things to keep in mind, if you were to do the program or just buy solar outright, you would get 26% back on a federal tax credit the first year. Obviously, your bill will be, if I've designed the system properly or it gets designed properly, I could have a utility bill, except for a connection fee to the utility provider. You would get rebates back from the utility provider if you do high efficiency stuff like washers and dryers and HVAC. You get rebates back for that stuff. We'd handle all that for you. So, you're basically saying, this is the house that I'm going to purchase. And now I'm coming back to you and saying, this is our program for you. And we handle everything. We handle the warranty information, registering the warranties for you. So you can focus on the purchase of your house and getting moved in to your house. And we'll handle everything for you. We'll give you a schedule.
That's really nice.
Mm-hmm. So I want it to be like you're going to a 5-star steakhouse.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're going to be treated as you should be.
A concierge service.
Absolutely. And that's the beauty of it. So as for the material types that I would choose and propose to you as a homeowner would be from countries that actually we don't have an adversarial relationship with, and I'll leave it at that. I prefer companies that have been in business for over 10 years and that they actually have a good enough, relationship with their consumers here. So if there is a problem with a solar panel or something along those lines, that they're not going to be out of business. So American publicly traded companies is where I would go.
Okay.
That's what I would do on the solar side. As for your inverters, you're going to be warranted from 10 to 25 years. But again, I would probably stick with something domestic, just because since I've been in the business, I've known people that have come out with cheap modules or inverters, and then they've gone out of business and everyone's sitting there with no warranty.
So a homeowner would be able to choose what solar company they want to use through you, but it would need to meet your qualifications.
I will be giving them bids from a couple of different local crews.
Okay.
And they would actually be able to, they'll get a better deal. The consumer will get a better deal coming through me because the solar company's not marketing.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going out and finding customers. I'm showing up and saying, hey, look, I've got a house for you. And this, and this, and it's a cash buyer. As opposed to having a sales guy go out there, having to do marketing to get those. All that is eliminated with my program.
Okay.
So a lot of the companies that are out there come in from other states for a while, then leave. I've noticed when they have negative reviews, that's a bad thing because then they just close up shop and open up under another name.
Mm.
So I use local vetted companies only with good reviews to install the materials. The materials themselves, we choose based on, like I said before, I like American companies. I want to keep my money home when it comes to that stuff. I won't be using a brand new American company until they've been through a certain period of time and their stuff has actually been vetted.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll give you an example. The best module in the world is a company called SunPower. They're out of California. They're also the most expensive. So they have a 22% efficiency rating, and that 22% efficiency rating really relates to the amount of sunlight gets converted into DC electricity. They also have the best warranty, which is 25 years bumper to bumper. But in order to justify the additional cost, you have to have a specific roof type. And that roof type would be smaller. So they're more efficient, they're more expensive, they have a better warranty. But if you've got a whole bunch of roof space, you don't need to spend that much money. So then I would go a step off that. You know what I mean?
So what are some of the qualifications that homeowners would need to meet? Like, for example, roof space.
Mm-hmm. That would be something I come up with for them. Like when they call me up and say, Eric, go look at this house, or have one of the guys go look at the house. I would go there and say, square footage, how many people are going to live in the house? I look at the history of that house to see how much energy they use. So then I would do calculations based on that to see what size system. Now, I take it a step further. So let's say, for instance, the house was built in the 70s, hasn't been updated. Okay, so the refrigerator they use, or the washer dryer is old, so it's not really efficient, or the windows are old. So what I'm going to do is recommend that we do a couple of different things. I won't need as much solar if I do the windows, because the windows can drop your energy costs by 20 to 40%. Therefore, I don't need as much solar.
So where I think you're about to go with this is sort of working backwards, because most people's initial idea is solar. But what I think you're about to say is sort of work backwards, update the appliances, update the windows,
absolutely.
Reduce the energy.
Yeah, not to mention if you bought a used house and there was some of those older appliances in there, you move in, there's like a warranty on it for 6 months maybe. Sometimes you get that warranty from a seller. All of a sudden, if it blows up, where are you going to get the $8,000 to fix that or replace it? You're going to go out in the open. You're going to have to get a financing tool. You're going to have to get charged 10%. So,
I love that. Go out in the open.
Yeah, go out in the open, and then you're going to get different guys showing up at the house, and they're going to be trying to sell you this, trying to sell you that. Yeah. What we're trying to do is we're trying to make it as simple for a new home buyer to do this program that believes in sustainability, and then take care of them. Because if I take care of you, then you're going to take care of me. Some of your friends are going to show up at the house one day and be like, how did you do this? And you're going to be like, Eric did it for me. Mm-hmm. Eric financed it, and we got everything taken care of. And then he handed me a book with all my warranties and registration at the end. So I did nothing, but I get the benefits. And that's what I want. And I believe that the consumers deserve that, especially the first-time home buyers, in my opinion, because most of the time they're listening to a whole bunch of different people, and that advice may not really work for them. Where are their goals? If they believe in sustainability, they probably have no idea that this is a possibility. And if they think it's a possibility and I can make it happen, then I'm happy.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. So that sounds like a concluding sentence right there. Not really, because we should keep going. But you're just like, I'm here for you, people.
Yeah, and it's, for the most part, I'm obviously a state and federally licensed loan officer, so I can't be part of the solar part, but I can very easily explain the solar part to anyone because I've done 600 systems personally, so I know it.
So I do want to ask you about this 26%,
mm-hmm.
and I was talking with someone recently and I learned that 26% is how much you can get back in tax credit until 2021.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's expected to go down to 0% 2022. What's your take on that?
Well, it was 30% up until last year. And so, like I said earlier, the panel prices have been coming down. So the logic is you don't really need it. I would love to see our governor step up and replace that federal tax credit with a state tax credit. That would kick butt. And I wouldn't put it past him to think, I would think he would be interested in doing that. I do work with the Colorado Energy office personally, and I know the guys over there because that's where the Renew loan comes from. And the Renew loan is an aftermarket loan that is subsidized by the state to do renewable energy stuff. I believe that the federal tax credit is something that helps out when trying to get into solar, but the panel price is coming down is more. Okay. And
so it's essentially you won't really need that tax credit for getting solar. You'll have essentially that tax credit will be used like in the price being lower.
That's correct. That's what I think. However, there are still incentives for doing it in certain different utility providers here in the state. They offer incentives, but Xcel Energy charges you, they charge you 11.5 to 12 cents a kilowatt hour for your energy, what you pay from them, regardless of demand charges right now, but it's 11.5, 12 cents, but they pay you 0.5 cent for what you produce and send to the grid. So it's not a moneymaker. Okay. And if you put a $30,000 solar system on your house, you're getting a tax credit of, if I'm doing my math right in my head, $7,800, which is against your income tax. It's not like you get a check for $7,800.
Right.
It goes against your income. So then you take 30% of that. So if you're thinking about it logically. Now, I'm not a tax consultant, so I would have to give you the disclaimer to call your tax consultant and run that by them. But, having given presentations to thousands of people on that, I can kind of tell you how it works. So I'm confident that eventually, after this stuff goes by, I guess you could say, I've heard whispers of really big plans for renewable energy in the state. He wants it to be California too, which for renewable energy is good. I would like to see that happen because people here are really earth conscious. And so, and the people that move here from other places typically are as well. So it's a good place for it. And we have so much sun.
It's sort of expected. Colorado is a earth conscious, environmentally conscious place. So I know a lot of people are working towards that because we aren't meeting ourselves where we expect to be yet. So can you elaborate what the Renew program is, the government? It's RENU, correct?
Yeah, Renew product is actually a UCC1 filing second mortgage. Okay, so UCC is the type of second it is. So what that means is if you go to Elevations Credit Union out of Boulder, and I'll be setting a bill for me telling you guys this, they offer $25,000 up to $35,000 to do renewable energy retrofits to your house. Okay. The big caveat to that is that the state backs it up. Because it's so hard for lenders to actually get around with their data and their numbers to actually offer a competitive loan for renewable energy upgrades, the state of Colorado has basically said, if you offer these loans, we'll backstop you. And what that does, that lets you offer lower interest rates on those loans. So whereas certain lenders would be in the 8 to 9% range on that $25,000, with the Renew product, and Champion Bank is actually considering becoming one of the lenders that do that, they will actually go down in the 4s and 5s on that.
Wow.
So by doing the 4 to 5 range and amortizing it out, it's trying to get you closer to what your current energy bill is. And then you get your benefits and your tax credits on top of that come back to you after. So you get the benefits of it, the bank itself, which has 0 defaults so far within the last 2 years. So it's just come out. But I'm in contact with the state, and there's a really low default rate.
Cool.
So because they're safe. And if there is a problem with one of the loans, they actually have second lien position. But if that person was going to refinance their house, that does not get in the way.
Nice.
Because it's kind of like a phantom or a ghost second mortgage, so to speak.
Okay. Well, I cannot wait to actually listen to the recording of this podcast because I'm going to learn a lot from listening to it twice.
Yeah,
probably
I'm sure.
even 3 times for sure.
Well, I mean, I know my stuff.
Yeah, you do. So let's talk about how the items will add value to your home.
Sure. So there's 2 different ways of looking at that. So there's from the consumer standpoint and from the bank standpoint, and they're very different. So when it's the bank, since I'm a representative of a bank, I'll kind of go into that first. The bank does not see a difference between you putting an air conditioner on your house or a refrigerator or a solar system at all. So it's basically an asset tied to the house, a window, so to speak. What they need is for that to comp out on an appraisal.
Right.
And that's the only thing that they're interested in. So let's say, for instance, if I sold a solar system as part of my program and the appraisal needs to reflect that, okay, that needs that, if I put on my invoice or the invoice that comes over from the contractor, mind you, if that invoice says that the solar system aspect of it was $20,000, there are certain appraisers that will not give you that $20,000, okay? Some of them will. So there's not enough data from comparable sales to support that solar system is worth the money that you're paid for it. So what I do is I typically provide the appraiser with that information, even though I'm not supposed to have contact with them. And I don't really. I just leave a copy of the invoice at the house that helps him out with his job. Now the investor it's allowed. Yeah. All I'm doing is saying, hey, we're doing this stuff to the house. This is what we're doing.
Yeah.
Makes sense? Mm-hmm. That way you know what you're doing. So I'm not calling up saying, hey, we're doing this. And that's, of course not. I would never do that. But that's what the investor is looking for, is to have data that they can reproduce, because they're going to sell the loan typically. You're not going to make your payments to Champion Bank for the next 30 years typically.
Right.
So what they're going to do is they're going to package up that loan and sell it, out in the open market. So they need to replicate that. Why did you give this house this value? So they pull everything apart. It's quality control to make sure there's no fraud involved. So that's how the investor looks at it. So in the past, when I've tried to do loans, like 4 or 5 years ago, nobody was comping out for solar. So you couldn't do it. So then I would go into the second mortgage or the home improvement loan category. Okay, so now there's been enough that have come into the appraisal system that they're starting to let that stuff in, so to speak. Wow. So that's what the bank is concerned with. Okay, there have been green mortgages for several years now. That's what they call them, green mortgages, where they allow you to add certain items into the loan, but you can't comp it out. So just because the government has regulations that say, yeah, you can do this, doesn't mean the banks have to lend that money, because they don't, what happens if we default? How am I supposed to get the money out of the solar panels? So that's where it really gets down to risk versus reward for the lender. Now, from the consumer standpoint, you yourself or myself can walk up to a house and be like, that house has got brand new windows. It looks like it's energy efficient. You give them a little report that says, your bill is $0. There's solar panels on it. I don't have to do anything for it. I think that's worth something. That's as a consumer. Other guys might walk up, or other people might walk up to it and say, I don't want anything to do with that. Therefore, you, as the person who likes it, would probably give a higher offer price for it. Mm-hmm. So it's basically emotion as opposed to numbers. And that's what the bank is interested in, is the numbers of it and justifying that, and in case of foreclosure. But as a consumer, it's different.
So it took about 5 years to get green mortgages to have enough comps for appraisers.
It's been more than that too. I mean, not every appraiser that and I don't have control over what appraiser comes out. So that's part of the investor doing that. So I'm not allowed to have any sort of interaction with them because of 2008. So it's called an appraisal management company. It gets assigned by the lender. So it randomly gets selected or sent to a specific AMC, and they turn around and go out to the house. So, then they come back and say, this house is worth purchase price, or this is what the house is worth.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So like I said, what I would do is I would just, in order to help out the appraiser, I would just say, hey, look, if this is a renovation loan, which is what these technically are, this is what we're doing to the house. That way they know what we're doing. And then what they would do is they'd go out, and the appraiser would actually make some phone calls and say, hey, look, if this person's doing a 5 kW system and they're charging $18,000 for it, is that about right? And more than likely they're going to say yes. You know what I mean? If it comes back at 25 and they're, it's way overpriced, they're like, I'm not giving you that value. Therefore, they're going to be cut out.
So is that about the value that solar panels usually give to a house? Is around $20,000, 18, less than 20?
Depends on the size of the system.
Okay.
And so there is one caveat to that. If you lease a system,
mm-hmm.
It's a debt against the house. So it's a negative. So if you go to one of the previously leasing companies, which they shall not be named, and you did a lease on the house, and the salesperson came out and said, oh, we're not putting anything against your house, that's not accurate. They're putting liens against your house, because one of the companies that shall not be named, which rhymes with Solar City, actually would go out and have their guys basically go to door, and they'd sell solar, and then they put liens against the house because there was no money into it. So to protect themselves, they put liens against the house. So then those customers would go to do a refinance on the house, and they'd be like, you have a second mortgage here for $35,000 under Solar City. And they're like, I didn't sign up for that. Yeah, you did. You didn't read the fine print.
Oh, wow.
So when you go to sell your house, now you got a lien for $35,000 that you got to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So now if I was buying that house, I'd be like, you're paying for that. I'm not paying for it. So you'd make the buyer, or you make the seller pay for that, which caused a lot of problems, a lot of lawsuits.
So do people still lease solar?
They do a little bit here and there. Because the tax benefits have, reduced a little bit, and because the performance-based incentive that Xcel pays their customers and other utility providers has been reduced, it's not economically viable for them to do it in a lot of instances. I know that there is one company here that is local that does do them, and I know somebody over there that's respectable. I can refer that out, but again, you don't own anything. You don't get any financial benefits to it except for a cheaper payment by a little bit. And then if you sell the house, you got to deal with transfer,
mm-hmm.
which could very well mean that you have to buy it out. So
you could end up owning them anyways.
You kind of do. Yeah. And then you got to worry about the warranty, but you don't get to choose your materials when you do a lease or even a power purchase agreement. Basically, it's whatever they put on there. So a lot of times, and their installations are not nearly as good as a custom installation, which is what most guys or most local companies that are smaller, more efficient, and have high ratings and reviews, they do it per house, as opposed to a larger company just showing up one day and you have 2 days to get this done. That's what they do. You have to get this installed done in 2 days. If not, then you're penalized. Whereas a normal company, a smaller one, it could take a week, but it's going to be precise.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's going to be a lot nicer looking.
Yeah. So when it comes to efficient appliances,
mm-hmm.
do you also provide options of what to choose?
Sure. Absolutely.
Where to go?
We do all that for you. The program is designed for us to go out and do that for you. Okay. Purchase them, install them. That's part of the program.
So I would come to you and say, hey, Eric, I want to be part of the program. I also need updated refrigerators and mm-hmm. washers and dryers. And so you would say, okay, these are your options. Do I have like 3 options, or what's the deal?
Depends on each customer.
Okay.
You know what I mean? I would probably start with a stainless steel product, a high efficiency, something that looks good. And then I'd give you a couple of options as to, we'll get this one or that one. And then we put it in there. And then the general contractor, which is actually what Renew is a licensed general contractor. And I don't own it, obviously, because I'm part of the bank. But Renew is a licensed general contractor, which their job is to do all of the installation work and then maintain it if there's maintenance that's required. So that would be where I'm separate from them.
Okay, so Renew Colorado is a whole separate entity.
It is. It's a name, and then there's a licensed general contractor that has been in business for 30 years with awesome reviews
Mhm.
that does all the actual work.
Okay.
So no chuck in the truck. And that term is something you might hear around town. Chuck in the truck is, I just showed up and, oh yeah, I just moved here from California. We'll do this for you. It'll be cheaper than everybody else. And then they disappear. You know what I mean? So that's really, the bank would never allow that. So when the bank actually, the investor that actually approves the loans, they have to vet the general contractor to do all of the work.
Sorry, who else is involved in the Renew Colorado?
What do you mean?
So you are, because you're with the bank.
It's my idea.
And then you have a general contractor.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then other than that, at this time, it's an evolving thing.
Right. So that's where I kind of got a little bit lost, was that I know that you started this and this is your name, this is your business card,
mm-hmm.
but then you just said, oh, well, it's a general contractor. So it just was a little
the licensed general contractor who's going to be the project manager on everything. So they're the ones that actually turn the wrenches. Okay, what I do typically is I helped facilitate the consumer, and then I help with, this is what you can do to the house, and I present it to them. That way they're not talking to multiple different people and getting confused during the purchase process. You don't want to get calls from a solar contractor going, hey, look, we need to check this out. And you're like, look, I'm trying to close. I have an inspection. You know what I mean? I don't want to deal with this right now. So we're giving them a couple of options, and then we're kind of stepping back until the loan closes. And that's where I work my magic getting the loan closed. After that, that money gets put into an escrow account. Mm-hmm. And then the general contractor will then be in contact with the customer. And at that time, he will be handling all of the construction aspects, giving them updates, scheduling installations, things like that. So that's kind of where it is right now.
So how can people get a hold of you to get this loan started?
You can call me, and we are in the process, or I am in the process of trying to get marketing materials together and explanations of all these things. But primarily it's going to be good if I just sit down and talk with you. What I will do then is we can come up with a plan to go ahead and do a purchase for you, whether it's 6 months from now, a year from now, and then we can actually build your credit up too. You can save money for a down payment, whatever you need to do. Mm-hmm. And then from there, we sit back and wait for that plan to be executed. And then from there, you start looking for houses. So you can contact me at my email address. It's ekrohn@thechampionbank.com, all spelled out. Or you can just text me or call me, and we can go from there. It's 720-425-4918.
Love it. Official radio broadcast right there when you drop the number. Official radio broadcast. So what's the time estimate that I know it's different for every person, but what do you expect the time estimate to be? If I come to you and say, hey, I can put 20% down. Mm-hmm. I've got 650 credit, pre-approved. I'm looking at a house that's 350 mm-hmm. in Denver. Well, it would probably be more like outside of Denver at that mm-hmm. price, but yeah. So let's say those are the criteria. What is the time estimate that you expect? I'm a first-time home buyer. I don't have any things against me.
Well, you could start, I would give you a pre-qual on the spot. Mm-hmm. And then you would turn around and go to you, Madison, and say, Eric said I can do this. Here's my price range. Let's go look at houses. I can do it immediately.
Okay.
So, or if there's somebody that wants to do it a year from now, they want to plan it out and they believe in sustainability, they want to do the program, mm-hmm. I can meet with them, give them a plan if they don't have one already, and then just kind of put them out, put them on the back burner for a little while. So it's either or.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So it works.
All right.
Well, cool. Thank you so much is there anything else that you want to cover before?
No, not right now. I'm sure we'll do another one of these where it gets more specific, but
yeah, this is a really good overview of the program, and I can't wait to hear what you do to market, and hopefully.
Yeah, should be fun.
Yeah. Well, Eric, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I really appreciate having you here. Thanks love your expertise. I love your knowledge. It's been it's been really golden. So thank you. Yeah.
A pleasure.
Explorers of Modern Ways, thank you so much for tuning in today. You can find more of me on Instagram at Moving with Madison and YouTube, Moving with Madison. YouTube is where I post the video recording of each episode, so you can watch along if you please. I hope you learned something new today, and that helps you take a tangible step towards creating your eco-friendly home.